If one of the greatest football legends of this world can lose their love for the game, what makes us think that burnout can only hit those that hate their job?
Terminó. Ya está, la peleé mucho, lo intenté, ya son 4 finales, no pude ganarla, hice todo lo posible. Me duele más que a ninguno, pero es evidente que no es para mí. Deseaba más que ninguno un título con la...
After losing yet another final with Argentina, Lionel Messi said that he was going to be stepping away from the international game for a while. He said he was done. And this wasn't because he was bad or that he'd lost his Midas touch. It was actually because mentally he was exhausted. And this is something that we can all relate to. We've often been taught that burnout is something that happens to those that are lazy, that don't like their jobs, that don't have perseverance or resilience. And this simply is not true. It doesn't mean that you're wrong for the job. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. It actually speaks to something deeper. Ironically, more often than not, those that suffer from burnout are not those that don't care. In fact, it's those that care a lot, or might even argue care too much.
I spent a good few years on the path to full burnout, full cannot get out of bed. I used to cry pretty regularly about the fact that I thought I would never be able to start my own family or take maternity leave to any extent because I would not be able to spend a single day out of the businesses. I was micromanaging for years because I was just trying to essentially make sure that I didn't want to do things wrong. I didn't want to have a massive cancellation for the business on socials.
It impacts the latter group because actually they care so much that they fail to turn off or take care of themselves or know when to draw the line. The biggest misunderstanding is that people think that burnout happens through sheer volume, that you're working too many hours, but that's not the whole truth. Burnout is actually caused by constant pressure with absolutely zero downtime or recovery times, as I say. There's a constant expectation and the fear that you cannot take your foot off the pedal. It's also often timed with constant self-criticism, the feeling of not being enough or not being able to do enough. It's often what I categorize as the type A performer.
I think one of the mistakes that we've made is we've confused workload with burnout. Well, it's related to some degree, but you can work with passion and you work long hours, and you can work long hours with no passion, and you're more likely to burn out. Because when you're working with passion, working those long hours is invigorating. Right? And I got this wrong for many years. I was very strict in my company that I didn't want anybody to work after hours and I didn't want anybody to work on weekends because, I believed in balance and blah, blah, blah. And a company I did some work with called Water Cooler, they gave me some data that showed, what the company is, they predict burnout. That's what they do, right? And they showed me this data, which was amazing. And basically, people who never work on weekends and never work in the evenings, very, very high risk of burnout or flight risk because they're bored and not very engaged. So very high flight risk, right? People who work too many nights and too many weekends, very high rate of burnout or flight risk because they're overdoing it. But people who occasionally work nights and weekends are actually very, very happy, and they're choosing to work those nights and weekends because they care. Because they care. And I immediately got it wrong. So now, I don't mind if people work nights and weekends. I monitor how often they're working nights and weekends. That's number one. But also, I check in with people, and we have to do that. Are you okay? How are you feeling? And I think the rapport of being able to check in with each other, this, as much as true with young people in friendship as it is with work, are you okay? How are you is a question we very, very rarely answer. And I'll leave with one final thought. A friend of mine, George Flynn, he retired as a 3-star general in the Marine Corps. He said that his test of leadership is if somebody asks you, are you okay? And actually cares about the answer. That's a leader.
Messi wasn't tired because he'd been playing too much football, he'd kicked the ball too much, he was training too much. In fact, what he was drained by was the pressure of an entire nation on his shoulders and being told that it was due to him that they hadn't won the global prize. And he took this expectation with him every time he went to play in the World Cup, that is enormous pressure for one person to hold. So as you can see, that's not physical exhaustion, it's actually mental. The problem is rarely work, and more often than not, it's the lack of downtime to recover emotionally and sometimes physically from the labor. Now, thinking about your own work, I've often been guilty of this. You get the promotion and you're already thinking of the rat race about getting yourself promoted in the next rounds. Nothing seems to be enough.
Despite all the success that you have, y'all know this, that there's always this voice in the back of your mind that you're never content.
Being available on Slack or Teams or responding to every ping, saying yes to everything is what's going to drive you to be successful.
I said, well, I don't have the luxury of doing that, because if something breaks, it's going to break on a big enough scale that I'm going to need to take responsibility for it and get the shit for it, as I should, as the founder and the owner and the public face and all of this. And I can't deal with that mentally right now because I'm so on the edge of burnout all the time. Like, I'm so on the edge.
You feel like you've got to answer every single email at 6 a.m. from bed and make sure that you're the last one leaving the office and answering every single email. You spend more time in your performance review looking at the 1 or 2 things that you have to improve on rather than the 10 to 12 great things that have been told about you and that you've been celebrated for within your team. This all leads to you not being able to switch off. You can love your job, be great at it, and still feel like you're heading towards burnout. And it's one of the things that I see most commonly with these folks. The biggest issue isn't that you care too much about the role or about your duties. The problem is that you never allowed yourself the grace to stop, recuperate, and go again.
Working hard does not mean working all the time, and like having it all does not mean like doing it all, and all of these various different things that actually are important to look at from ourselves.
The biggest reshift in your thinking that I can encourage is, please don't treat rest as a reward for your work. The thing with work, especially when you work for a big organization or even for yourself, is that it keeps on coming. One of the sayings that I abide by, which makes me laugh often, is that the reward for good work is more work. So if you're expecting your work to dry up before you can rest, you'll never be able to rest. What is actually more important is that you are the A player and that you are able to bring a fresh perspective, lots of gusto, lots of strength and persistence in your role. And this all requires rest, rejuvenation, and a spring in your step. And that all comes from time away from your work. Elite athletes like Messi understand this better than anyone. Every bit of their rest is scheduled in, and they are asked to adhere to as much as they are asked to adhere to their training. And that's not because these folks are weak or not able to have the stamina to carry on playing. It's because they understand that a lot of the rebuilding of the muscles and the strength itself comes from rest.
No, no sé, la verdad que ahora así no recuerdo, ahora estoy cansado, estoy con poca fuerza.
You don't recover because you've earned it. You recover so that you can keep on going. And this is the biggest shift that I've seen in my mindset. So what are the actionable steps that you can take to ensure that you're not headed for burnout? Number 1, take your holiday. If you're like me that often postpones your holiday, booking it in advance and asking your managers to make sure that you're held accountable to it is a great way to ensure that you're resting intermittently. Number 2 is protecting your weekends like a meeting that you can't move. For example, if you were going to meet your CEO or an important stakeholder, only taking on extra projects that give you visibility or provide you with an extra skill set that you're wanting to learn, or allowing you to have stronger ties to sponsors who can promote you for a short period of time are the things that you say yes to. Because you cannot continue to be working at 110%. You need to give yourself some off-season. Number 4 is learning who you are and understanding what your hobbies and identity is outside of work. Knowing that you're a runner, or that you love reading or making pottery. These are all important aspects of your identity. Ensuring that you're clear about them and making time and space for them within your diary in your downtime outside of your working hours is super critical in ensuring that you don't head to burnout and that your cup is being refilled as you are spending the time working on things.
One thing I didn't realize when I just started working in corporate and then when I started my business was how important hobbies are for your career. Whether you're into sports, collecting stuff or watching stuff, it actually does impact like your progression at your job.
The last one is the most important one, because understanding who you are and who your identity is critical. When things are not going great at work, you don't take it on as personally, and you understand that what you're going through at work isn't crisis, that you have other things in your life that give you joy, happiness and purpose. And that is critical in ensuring that you don't have prolonged periods of burnout and that you're not overworking yourself to try and claw back good favor or good feedback. Good feedback and good praise can happen, but that needs to happen over a longer period of time. You don't need to work as intensely for a number of years to try and get yourself, in quotation marks, on track. What I always say is, if your job is your number one pillar, try and build some other pillars around. If you only had one leg to sit on a chair, it's way too wobbly. So try and build out the other areas, like something to do with your fitness, something to build your intelligence, something to build your networks, i.e. to do with your friendships or family, is critical to ensuring that you are in a good position when one or two of those legs shake, that you have those other things to rest on and that you're not going into crisis mode. So if you've been feeling that quiet exhaustion, that even after a good night's sleep isn't going away, the one that feels like it's in your mind and not your body, then take it as a serious sign to make some changes. It's not a weakness, it's a signal. If Messi needed time away from football and recuperate and come back and get a World Cup, then it's okay for you to step away from work and prioritize yourself. Loving yourself and protecting yourself from work are not polar opposites. The most successful employees, managers, career changers are the ones that learn to do both. I make evidence-based videos like this frequently, almost every week. So please do subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're notified about videos like this. Please share this with someone who you're worried about is heading into that burnout phase, so that they can take away some practical advice about things that they can do in the immediate run. Also drop in the comment section a time where you were heading into burnout, or if you have actually experienced burnout and how you came out of it, so it could serve as a hopeful story to others so that other people can also avoid burnout. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.